The NCAA paying its players? Yeah, it might actually finally happen. In a groundbreaking new proposal, NCAA President Charlie Baker recently outlined a future in which Division I's top money-making schools would form their own subdivision and adopt a framework that's more akin to professional sports. Basically, the student-athletes who serve as the backbone of a billion-dollar industry would actually be able to enrich themselves in the process. And get this, the proposal includes no cap on compensation. Yeah, this is serious. Frankly, it's nothing short of a radical reimagining of the NCAA, and we're gonna break down this potentially revolutionary proposal for you right now. Sit back, relax, and take this in. As we all know, for more than a century, 117 years and counting to be precise, the NCAA has clung to its principle of amateurism, which is to say, it managed to avoid paying its student athletes even as the NCAA and its most prominent schools started generating hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars a year in revenue. In recent years, however, as public opinion shifted in favor of student athletes getting paid, the NCAA, amid considerable pressure from the Supreme Court, finally started to give some ground on that front. In 2021, in a groundbreaking development, the NCAA granted its players the right to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. In other words, schools still couldn't pay their players directly, but student athletes could make money off of licensing deals with third parties, and in some cases, big money. In year one, student athletes made roughly $1 billion in NIL deals. But as many predicted, and as this new proposal from the NCAA all but reinforces, the NIL breakthrough was just a precursor to student athletes being paid directly by their schools. So, the proposal. Here's the gist of it. The NCAA is recommending the creation of a new subdivision comprised of the highest resource Division I schools. Those schools who joined the new subdivision would then be able to pay their players directly through a special trust fund and by entering into their own NIL deals with them. Let me say that again because this is a massive deal. This proposal would make the kind of direct pay-for-play model that the NCAA has resisted for years into a reality. And there's no cap on the size of these deals either. In fact, schools that join the new subdivision would be required to set aside a minimum of $30,000 per year for at least 50% of their eligible athletes into their student payment fund. The NCAA is calling it an Enhanced Education Trust. An example then. In 2022, the University of Georgia had 523 student athletes. So, under this proposal, if the Bulldogs were to join the new subdivision, they'd have to allot at least $7.84 million per year for those student athletes. Now, that figure is still less than Kirby Smart, the head coach of Georgia's football team, makes in a year, but again, that's the minimum amount they'd have to invest in their players. In reality, with no limits or restrictions on how players are compensated, and Power 5 schools like Georgia generating hundreds of millions in annual revenue through broadcasting deals, ticket sales, and booster donations, the players' earnings could be huge. And it's worth mentioning that this trust fund money isn't just for football players. Schools that opt in would need to be compliant with Title IV, which means that they need to provide equal opportunity for men and women athletes to receive trust fund payments. So what does this mean from a competition perspective? Well, in truth, it does create, or rather it exacerbates, the less than level playing field between the highest resource schools and everyone else. Because under this proposal, schools in both D1 subdivisions would still be competing for the same championships, with the exception of FBS football. So the March Madness tournament, for example, could feature a bunch of schools that pay their players and a bunch of schools that don't. But so it goes. The fact of the matter is, the NCAA's commitment to amateurism has been under fire for a while now. And this proposal is likely an attempt to diffuse some of the pressure it's facing from both Congress and the National Labor Relations Board. And while this new framework is still a ways off from being voted on and potentially implemented, the mere suggestion of a pay-for-play model from the sitting NCAA president represents another radical development in the rapidly changing landscape of college sports. And it wouldn't be surprising if at some point in the not-too-distant future, the dated and self-serving idea that amateurism is critical to the integrity of the NCAA disappeared entirely.